The desert never made mistakes. Every stone, every thorned bush, every wind-carved ridge existed because it was meant to. That was what the elders used to say. And that was what the land itself seemed to whisper as dawn broke over the red plains. The sun rose slowly, spilling gold over the vast emptiness, touching the earth with a warmth that felt ancient and watchful. This land had seen blood, love, betrayal, and survival long before any fence post or ranch house ever scarred its skin. And on this morning, as a lone rancher rode across his boundary line, the land prepared to witness something else, something that would not be remembered as a mistake, but as destiny. Ethan Cole had learned to live with silence, not the peaceful kind people spoke of in books, but the heavy silence that followed loss. His ranch sat miles from the nearest town, a rough spread of land most men would have abandoned years ago. The soil was stubborn, the winters cruel, and the summers unforgiving. But Ethan stayed. He always stayed. Every fence he repaired, every horse he fed, every sunrise he greeted. Alone was his way of telling the world he hadn't been beaten yet. People said he was foolish to remain so close to Apache territory. Said he was inviting trouble. Ethan didn't argue. He had learned long ago that words were lighter than dust in the wind. He rode that morning with his hat low, eyes scanning the horizon more from habit than fear. His rifle rested against his saddle, unused and unloved. He carried it because the world demanded it, not because his heart did. The truth was, Ethan was tired of fighting, tired of proving himself to men who had never bled for this land the way he had. What he didn't know was that the land had already chosen to test him in a different way. From the ridge above, she watched him. Her name was Ayanna. Among her people, it meant eternal bloom. A cruel joke, she sometimes thought, given the life she had been born into. She was Apache, raised on stories of warriors and women who never bowed, who carried the strength of mountains in their blood. She had been taught to see settlers as threats, ranchers as invaders, and lone men as the most dangerous of all. Yet as she watched Ethan ride below, something unsettled her. He didn't move like a man hunting or guarding. He moved like a man surviving. Ayanna had come alone, against the wishes of her clan. The elders said the land was restless, that the spirits were uneasy. She had felt it too, the pull that drew her away from camp before dawn, urging her toward the borderlands where Apache territory blurred into rancher land. She told herself she was scouting, protecting her people. But deep down, she knew that was only half the truth. Something had called her here, something older than fear and stronger than tradition. The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of hooves upward. Ethan stopped his horse suddenly, his body going rigid. He didn't know why, only that every instinct he had screamed that he was no longer alone. Slowly, carefully, he turned his head. Their eyes met across the distance, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For Ayanna, it was like staring into a still lake and seeing her reflection for the first time. This was not the enemy she had been warned about. His face was weathered, marked by sun and sorrow, his eyes tired but honest. There was no hunger there, no hatred, only surprise and something else she couldn't name. For Ethan, the sight of her stole the air from his lungs. He had seen Apache warriors before, had felt their hostility, their warning presence. But this woman stood like the land itself, untamed, proud, and painfully alive. Neither reached for a weapon. Seconds stretched into something fragile and dangerous. Ayanna's hand hovered near her knife, not in threat, but in uncertainty. Ethan dismounted slowly, making sure every movement was deliberate, respectful. He remembered what little he had learned. Sudden actions meant death. He raised his hands slightly, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "I'm just riding my line," he said, his voice low, steady. "Didn't mean to cross anything." She understood enough of his words to grasp his meaning, but it was the tone that stayed her hand. No challenge, no demand, just truth. The land between them seemed to soften, as if recognizing something familiar. Ayanna lowered her hand and took a step forward, then another. Each step felt like crossing an invisible boundary her people had drawn generations ago. "You are close to Apache land," she said finally, her English careful but strong. "I know," Ethan replied, Been close my whole life. That answer lingered between them. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. They stood there, two souls shaped by the same unforgiving earth, separated by history, but united by solitude. Neither knew it yet, but this moment, this quiet, impossible meeting, would echo through their lives like a drumbeat. The land had seen many crossings, many clashes, but this one was different. This one carried the weight of choice. And if you're feeling the pull of this story already, the tension, the silence, the unspoken fate, remember this. Stories like this only continue because people choose to stay for the journey. If you want to witness how destiny unfolds, how two worlds collide and change forever, make sure you subscribe and stay with us. The land is watching, and this is only the beginning. The land remembered them even when they tried to forget each other. Days passed after that first meeting, yet neither Ayanna nor Ethan could return to the lives they had known before. For Ethan, the ranch felt different, as if the silence he had grown used to now carried her presence in every creak of the windmill and every shadow at dusk. He worked harder than ever, not because the land demanded it, but because his mind refused to rest. He replayed her eyes again and again, not as a threat, but as a question the world had finally dared to ask him. For Ayanna, the pull was even stronger. Among her people, laughter continued. Fires burned, stories were told, yet her spirit wandered back to the boundary line where a lone rancher had looked at her not as an enemy, but as a human being shaped by the same suffering and strength as himself. The elders warned that attachment weakened judgment, that destiny was written by the ancestors, not chosen by the heart. But Ayanna felt something older than their warnings stirring within her, something that spoke of paths not yet walked and futures not yet claimed. When she returned to the borderlands under the cover of twilight, she told herself it was only curiosity. Yet when Ethan appeared from the fading light, leading his horse instead of riding it, she understood the truth. They had both been called back by the same invisible force. Words came easier this time, cautious but honest, shared beneath a sky bruised purple and gold, where stories of loss slowly replaced fear. Ethan spoke of a life spent building and rebuilding, of loving once and burying too soon, of choosing solitude not because he preferred it, but because it hurt less than hope. Ayanna spoke of being born between expectations, of strength mistaken for obedience, of a future planned without asking her heart. With every sentence, the distance between them closed, not by footsteps but by understanding. Yet destiny is never gentle when it tests those who dare to choose it. When riders appeared on the horizon, men who believed borders were defended by bullets instead of respect, Ayanna knew the truth could no longer hide in silence. Standing between Ethan and the approaching danger, she made her choice clear without raising a weapon. She chose him, not as a mistake, not as betrayal, but as destiny. The confrontation ended not in blood, but in a moment that would be remembered by the land itself. A woman refusing to be owned by fear, and a man learning that survival did not have to mean loneliness. As the riders turned back and the night swallowed the plains, Ayanna remained, not as an Apache scout, but as a woman who had claimed her own path. And if this story has carried you this far, if you felt the tension, the courage, and the quiet power of choice, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us, because stories of destiny are not meant to be heard once and forgotten. They are meant to be followed, remembered, and lived through until the very last word.